All right, hello everybody. Today we're going to go over how to write a compare contrast essay. First and foremost, we want to remember that compare means things are similar between two things, and contrast means two things are different, or rather, discussing the similarities and discussing the differences. Okay, so we want to make sure often when we think compare contrast, everyone just thinks what's different about them. But we also want to think about what is the same. Okay, there are a few different structures that you can use when writing a compare contrast essay, and those I will show you in this lesson. The goal is to have you understand those by the end. And then also, when it comes to writing, in your assignments here in Edgenuity, you will be able to show me that you indeed can compare and contrast literature or various texts or various ideas. So when we think about um, literature and informational texts, what is there to be compared and contrast? And truthfully, the list is really never ending. Okay, so if we think here, on the one side, it's more the literature base, so the more fictional things. We could definitely compare and contrast character personalities, themes of a text, development of a theme, development of characters, really so many different aspects of literature. Development of theme or development of characters, that is more so talking about author style. How does the author create the theme within a text? How does the author make a character come alive and make you understand the character's personality, right? Because we can probably all think of different books, or if we were to think of different books or different movies or whatever, those things come about differently, but also very similarly. So those are the things within literature. If we're thinking nonfiction, right, you might be able to compare and contrast an experience. That's what we do often all the time in our daily lives, right? When we're talking to peers or family members, we're kind of comparing and contrasting, our days, if you will. You can compare and contrast people and opinions. If you're someone looking to go to a college next year, you probably are going to be starting to compare and contrast universities and what they offer. Sources of information, right? We should always be thinking about what one source is offering versus the other, or maybe they're both indeed offering the same thing. Okay, so the list is endless. In Edgenuity, you're going to get a prompt that probably tells you what to compare and contrast. You want to think of it, and it might be one of these things here that you see. Okay, so when you get that prompt, the first thing you do is brainstorm, right? If it is to compare the themes of two texts and how they are developed, you need to read the text. Okay, there's no way around it. You need to read the full text, and as you're reading it, put that lens on, right? Identify that purpose for reading, and you identify in that situation, your purpose for reading is to think about what is the message, right? That's the theme, and how was it created? As I'm reading, I'm thinking about that the whole time. Okay. And then once you've read both texts, you compare and contrast what things were similar, what things were different in the development of that theme. Okay. So brainstorm is the biggest thing. You have to gather that evidence. Once you have it all, then you can develop a strong thesis statement. Okay. There's two ways to do this. One, you can have a more broad statement, okay, that doesn't really give answers, if you will, leaves it a little more open-ended, or you can have a really narrowed one, where you kind of say exactly what was the same and what was different and what you're going to be talking about. Okay, so here, this example, author A and author B are both similar and different in how they develop character personalities in the text, blah and blah. Okay, and then obviously to follow, I'm going to explain those similarities and differences. A narrowed example really dials it down to what I'm going to be talking about. Author A develops theme through character action. Okay, so boom, that's how the author does it. I'm telling you right in my thesis statement. While author B develops theme through reader reflection. Okay, boom, that's how they do it. Okay, so then my essay is probably going to be more so on the contrasting side, but also probably talking about a few similarities they have. Okay, so for the broad example, now we're getting into the structure of how you could break this down. Okay, this one essentially, you're gonna have an introduction, of course, that has your thesis statement in it, and then your first body paragraph. And I'm going to go back for a second. So this is the thesis I'm talking about. So the broad example, right? So I'm comparing and contrasting the ways that these two authors develop the character personalities. Okay. So my first body paragraph, I'm going to talk about how author A developed character personality. My second paragraph, I'm going to talk about the first way that author B does, and then how it contrasts to A. So I might say, similar to author A, blah, 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 or unlike author A, blah, 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 blah. Okay. That's kind of my first section of my my essay. The next section is the second way that they do that, right? The second way that they develop character personalities. And I am going to talk about how author B does it. And then I'm going to talk about, oh, I'm sorry, guys, I have a typo here. The second body four should be the second way author A develops it, right? So that's just kind of a stylistic thing. You can go in any order you want, but you want to think about talking about how they're developing it, and then how is that the same or different? Okay, and then of course the conclusion. Now, to go back for one more second, the next thing we're going to talk about is this narrowed example of a thesis statement, right? So in the narrowed example of a thesis statement, this is a close-ended thesis. That means I give my full answer right up front. I'm going to be talking about how author A develops theme through character action. And then I'm also going to be talking about how author B develops theme through reader reflection. Okay, so this one's a little more straightforward, right? Body A, how author A develops theme. Body 2, that's paragraph, right? The second big body paragraph. How author B does it. And then my third paragraph is kind of the meat of it. I'm going to compare and contrast what I just told my reader, right? How are those things similar and different? And then, of course, I wrap it up with my conclusion. So as you can see, a compare contrast essay might have 6 paragraphs. It might have 5. There are times where it could have 4, right? It likely will never have 3. It for sure will never have 2. Right? So a lot of times students ask me, how long should it be? Really, that depends on your structure and how you structure it, but it needs to not just be one big block of writing, right? It needs to be evident paragraphs with a purpose, which that's where this structure comes in. Okay, and then lastly, of course, you revise and edit. So big picture, did you compare and contrast? Did you talk about similarities and differences? If it was just one or the other, then you're going to want to add more in. Did you indent the paragraphs? Did you include transitions, right? All of those things are important when you're revising and editing. As always, reach out with any questions you have about comparing and contrasting and how to write this essay. I am happy to brainstorm with you and to kind of help you get that structure worked out. You have the ideas and I will just help guide. I'm excited to read your writing and hear your ideas. I look forward to reading it soon.